So with us today is political strategist and CEO of Vantage Influence, Aaron Shaviv. So he's basically the guy that leaders call on when things are looking bleak for their political campaigns in the world of, high stakes global politics. So how exactly is political power won in the 21st century? Let's go deep with Aaron Shaviv. Welcome to the Long Take.
Thank you. Happy New Year.
All right. So first off, let's talk about Vantage Influence and you. So over 90 election campaigns, about 22 heads of state elected with your help, even when polls said that, they were dead in the water. When a losing candidate approaches you for help, what's the first thing that you look at? Walk us through the process. Tell us about what you do in the first 72 hours.
So the first thing we do is public opinion research. You understand that I will never understand the politics of Philippines, as an example, better than you or better than a political leader in the Philippines. But what I bring to the table is very intense, very deep public opinion research. Mostly decisions around election campaigns are usually made around a table of like 7 to 12, usually men. And they go around the table on every issue and, I think this and I think that. And eventually there's either a consensus or there's one decision maker. And I want a seat around that table, but I'll never start a sentence with, I think that. Because what Aaron Shaviv thinks about the politics of Philippines, it means nothing. But I'll start my sentences with, our data shows that, or the numbers show that if you do A, the consequence will be B. If you do X, the consequence will be Y. So it's putting some empirical numbers into the decision-making of the campaign. So
you present scenarios.
Yes, ground zero for every campaign we do is public opinion research. Empirical data into the decision-making.
So we know that political landscapes, of course, differ in various countries, but what is true for every voter out there in the world? And how do you use this information to work with all the kinds of candidates that you work with?
That's a really good question. I think, we've worked across continents, really from Cambodia to Colombia and everything in between. And now we're trying to push into the Philippines. What's true for voters everywhere? Voters want a better life for themselves, a better life for their children. And this is really the driving force. So when a voter wakes up on election day, the question we want him to be asking himself is, what do I get out of it? If I go out and vote for some candidate, how will my life get any better from that? Now, context is wildly different, between if it's, what would make someone's life better in the Philippines, very different from what would make their life better in
Third world country,
in Kenya or Bolivia, of course. But the underlying human state is, I want a better life for myself and for my children.
Okay, so jumping off from that, how can a candidate's campaign benefit from an outsider's perspective? What would someone from the outside looking in see that we on the inside don't?
Well, let's go back to that decision-making scenario, that table where you have 7 to 12, usually men, who are sitting around and they're going around the table and they're giving their opinions. Each one of those people is subjective in some way. The candidate, the most subjective person in the room, but everyone around him, all his advisors who are good advisors, beyond giving their real advice, they also have baggage. Someone did something to me 3 years ago and I want to get back at them, or I want to position myself to be the minister or something, or the advisor in the next administration. So there's a subjective element in the room. What we bring is impartiality,
is neutrality,
and numbers. Yes, it just goes by the numbers.
All right. You want to talk about the Montenegro incident?
Yeah, Montenegro is a great example. So in 2016, we took on a coalition of parties, opposition parties, who were running against an incumbent in Montenegro. It's a tiny little country in Europe. And the guy in power had been in power for 26 years. So he's really entrenched. And to be fair, he ran elections, more or less free and fair elections, but he was never really challenged from an electoral point of view. What's true to say is that over time, the opposition parties enjoyed fighting amongst themselves more than they did fighting the guys in power. But in 2016, they all came together into coalition, and they put the differences aside and they said, we all agree on one thing: we need change. And so I went to work for them. And for the first and only time in 26 years, we ran a very, very aggressive and very competitive election.
Mhm.
The party in power, since for 26 years, they've never been challenged from an electoral point of view. They only woke up to the fact that this is a really competitive election, like too close to call. They woke up to this fact 2 or 3 days before the elections. And panic set in. And on the day of the elections, we woke up at 6 a.m. and there was breaking news. The breaking news was security forces had arrested a terror cell that was tasked with a coup d'etat and the assassination of the head of state on election day. And the purpose of this was really to suppress the opposition vote and also to bring out the incumbent's vote, right? Because
Yeah.
we're under attack, we're the patriotic side. Security forces were out on every street corner on election day. And despite all of this, the opposition still won. We won 51 to 49 seats in parliament. But the story
So it counts as a win?
really, you know what? It depends how you look at it, because the story of the coup kept on going. Meaning there were trials of the heads of opposition, and they were convicted for trying to pull off a coup. And my name somehow also got
You yourself
tied,
were
yes,
embroiled.
it got tied into this to the point where I found myself with an Interpol red notice in 2019 for this. So Interpol waved this away very, very quickly, and determined this is 100% politically motivated. But it's a really, really significant case. What we do is...
Did you say that changed you?
Oh, it affected me deeply because it was very, very personal.
Also with the way that you choose your clients.
So no, it doesn't affect the way okay. The premise of your question is, do I only choose safe clients, so to speak? And the answer is no. The truth is, most of my clients have a real electoral challenge. If they didn't have a challenge, they wouldn't be hiring me. So if you're an incumbent and you feel very confident about yourself, about your re-election, you don't hire me because I'm very expensive and you'd rather spend your money elsewhere. So it hasn't changed the way that I pick my clients. I will pick a client, doesn't matter what it looks like at the outset, whether they're winning or losing. I want to see that the client is a viable option, that they can win if they do the right things. It changed me, this whole incident changed me personally. It was very tough for a long period of time. For about 5-6 months, I was under an Interpol red notice, a very serious one. So, of course, it had an effect on me and my family. It didn't change much in terms of the clients we're willing to take.
In terms of work,
in terms of work, yeah.
So, since you operate in the shadows, let's say, I guess I'm also curious about the ethics of all of this. Do you see yourself as a neutral professional, somewhat kind of like a lawyer? Do you ever feel responsible for the actions of the people that you help put in place? Do you ever think about whether or not you're on the right side of history? Okay,
really great question. So first of all, we do operate in the shadows, but not in a negative connotation, meaning I should never be the story. I do want to work behind the scenes. I'm not a celebrity. I don't want to be in front of the campaign.
No desire to be famous here.
No, the campaign should be about the candidate. The campaign should be about what the candidate will do for his voters and for the country. It shouldn't be about the consultant. Now, we're a consultancy. We have lots of clients across the globe, and we have a very wide spectrum of people that we work with across ideological fields, from right to left. We have red lines. We have very strict red lines. We've only met them a couple of times, but within those, quite a wide spectrum, we're willing to work with lots of candidates. In fact, I should probably say one of the times that we met our red lines was in Cambodia. So within Southeast Asia, we went to work with the Hun Sen, who'd also been in power for many, many years. And there was an argument to be made about whether we should or shouldn't work with him. In my view, what we do is public opinion research. So if Han Sen, who for the first time in 26 years was interested in seeing what his people really think and what they really want, and he was interested in seeing focus groups and surveys from a neutral party, empirical numbers could only be a good thing. And it was a good thing for quite a while until it all fell apart. But it was tremendous.
Okay, so let's talk about one specific thing that's happening right now. Let's touch on the US-Venezuela conflict. What's the message that Trump is sending out there to everyone, most especially to his fellow world leaders, about how he's trying to resolve the conflict with Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro? How would Trump's actions impact Venezuela's change in leadership? Should they be forced to have one, most especially via an election?
Yeah, so it's been quite the rough start for 2026. I think the place where where the U.S. action in Venezuela will have the biggest effect is not in Venezuela. It's not in Latin America. I think it'll be in Iran. Iran is a conflict which is bubbling up. There is great civil unrest there, and Trump has come out and publicly stated that he will take action if the Iranian regime act against their own people. And if the Iranian regime had any shadow of a doubt that he will do what he says, he has proven over the last weekend that he will. And so I think that's where the biggest impact will be. If the Iranian regime does fall this year, it would change the world. I mean, it would change the Middle East. It would change the world tremendously.
So Trump just proved that he can.
Not only that he can,
that he will.
That he will.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So based on the numerous political campaigns, because if we focus on Trump, that's going to be an entire interview altogether. So in your political campaigns in the past, you worked also with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Would you say that playing on fears is a more strategic move than presenting hope? Are we also seeing a trend in the kind of leaders that we have right now, or is there still room for a wild card?
Well, okay, so these are two separate questions. There's no yin without yang, right? So there's no fear without hope, and there's no hope without fear. And so both of those are crucial in an election campaign,
they can work
especially
hand in
for
hand.
a candidate.
Yeah.
Well, they have to, because if you try to present hope and there's no fear behind it, then it's pointless, and vice versa. So they work hand in hand. Good political leaders know how to do that, and they know how to put it together.
Now, talking about the leaders,
yes.
Are we seeing a trend in the kind of leaders that we have been electing in worldwide?
So there's a little bit of a trend recently in seeing more personality candidates, and you could certainly, Donald Trump is one of them. Bolsonaro in Brazil is one of them. So we're definitely seeing more and more kind of personality candidates. The tricky thing is, candidates who look at these at these people, they want to be that, and if you're not, you can't fake it.
Personality candidates, are there types of candidates?
So the way we usually look at candidates, we either have personality candidates, so this is Donald Trump is the absolute best example. Structural candidates, meaning she's a woman, I'm a woman, of course I'll vote for her. Or issue-based candidates. And so issue-based candidates, I think, in today's world are becoming less and less and less. And it's because social media is a huge part of this, because social media lends itself to personality candidates, right? It really helps them show off this personality.
So you've mentioned Cambodia a while ago. You've worked with so many other Southeast Asian countries like Thailand. Is there something that you say would be distinctly Filipino in our elections? What's going on here that would pique the interest of one Aaron Shaviv, that he's here with us?
Thank you. Well, look, I think politics in the Philippines is really driven by social media. More
social media capital of the world.
Yes, absolutely. But yeah, more so than anywhere else around the world. So candidates have really understood that social media is the platform, and it's where they can reach voters. So I think Philippines politics is way ahead of the curve on this compared to anywhere. There's a big question of how to use it. So everyone knows that they need to use it. The big question is, if you go on TikTok and do a dance, does that serve your campaign or not? So I would argue that it doesn't. I would argue that social media is a platform to deliver a message. If you're not delivering your message, then you're just in the entertainment business. So I think that's somewhere that we can really be helpful to candidates here in the Philippines, but certainly the idea that social media is a platform, way ahead of the curve.
Would you also say that you help with what the message is, or more on how the message is being presented?
Yeah. So look, we're not in a position to advise on what. These candidates, they're going to be your representatives, they're going to be your senators, they're going to be your VP and your president, and they should know what. It's up to them, and they will be the leaders. We're not policy advisors, but we help them with the how, meaning how to deliver a message through TikTok or on Facebook to make it effective. And also, if you think about candidates, especially if you think on the Senate level and the VP and presidential, well, they have opinions on everything. They have positions on everything from defense to floods to the economy to healthcare. And we help them whittle it out and understand what's really going to shift the voter. So from the 10 to 15 different things that you want to say, we eliminate 90% of it. And so just focus on the message that's really going to shift voters.
And move voters.
Yes, of course. Of
So,
course.
yeah,
And I have to say that I think today in the Philippines, we're looking at a play for the margins, meaning are there going to be tremendous big shifts? Maybe not, but elections are going to be won and lost on the margins, on shifting 2 to 3% from one side to the other side. And that's the real trick. I mean, it makes it very, very difficult.
Right, we'll zoom in on that later.
Okay.
Speaking of kingmakers and the like, there's actually a documentary, a 2019 documentary film entitled just that, Kingmaker. And it's about Imelda Marcos. I don't know if you've watched it. It's about presidential mother. So perhaps the most quoted line from there is, "Perception is real, truth is not." How much of this approach to history, to public image, still holds up in today's politics?
Well, let's look at recent events in the Philippines with the floods, right? So perception is not everything, because it's a reality, and it's a very harsh reality. And how the current leadership deals with the floods and with the crisis management, you can't fake that. So that's not perception. That's about real policy. It's about really helping people where they need it and when they need it. Of course, in a campaign, everything becomes shallower, and you have to be able to take a very complex message and deliver it in 30 seconds sometimes. And so in that respect, perception is everything, but there has to be an underlying reality. I think one of the really challenging parts of being a politician is the duality of it. You could be a great executive, so you could be, the best governor, the best senator, the best president, but if you're a terrible campaigner, you won't get reelected, and also vice versa. You could be the greatest campaigner in the world and a terrible, terrible executive or a terrible representative. So there's a duality there. Really successful politicians, they do both. They're great at their job and they're great campaigners, but it's not everyone. They're actually few and far between.
So charisma's got to be in there somewhere.
It has to be in there, yeah.
So, jumping off from that, from the flood control scandals hounding the current administration, what's the narrative that our current president, President Marcos, is trying to go for? How is the public receiving it? And in the long run, why will it matter? He has 2 years left of his term.
Yes, I don't want to comment specifically about the president, mainly because I suspect I'll be working for one side or the other in the upcoming elections.
Sure.
But the truth, but the key in crisis is be honest, take responsibility, and do it very, very early on. So don't play around, because these are very serious matters. These really are people's lives, and in these situations where people's lives are really, really affected, there's no second issue. Meaning, sometimes in elections we'll say, okay, the first issue is the economy, the second is corruption, the third is, but if your life is at stake, there's no second issue. It's the only thing you really, really care about.
It's the only thing that matters.
It's the only thing that matters. And there's no second issue. You go to sleep at night thinking about that, and you wake up in the morning thinking about it. It's the same as poverty, for example. If you don't know how you're going to feed your children tomorrow morning, that's what you go to sleep with, and that's what you wake up with. And there's no second issue. Your second issue isn't um, defense or international relations. It's the only thing you really care about. So my advice for the current leadership is to take us. Okay, you asked about the time frame. You say there's 2 years ahead, right?
Yes, 2 years left of his term.
2 years left.
So why will all this matter?
Okay, it will matter if they don't take responsibility. If the current leadership doesn't take responsibility, that is going to be the narrative that they're going to dig in on for the next 2 years. If they do, then those 2 years, if they do take responsibility, the 2 years will serve them very, very well. They'll have 2 years to fix it if they take responsibility and they take action. If they don't, this idea of a leadership that doesn't take responsibility will grow and grow and grow and probably harm them in the next election.
Mm. Well, on the flip side, we have the ICC proceedings against former President Rodrigo Duterte, and then the impeachment cases against his daughter, current VP Vice President Sara Duterte, that are also over corruption issues. But how is the public taking this, and why are they taking it very differently?
So corruption, notoriously, a very difficult subject to deal with in election campaigns because of the premise that everyone is corrupt. All politicians are corrupt. And so when one side, indicts or mudslings at the other side, it doesn't usually help them. The corruption that we're seeing now, until the floods, was very high level, okay? Meaning it really touched upon the politicians. It was interpolitics. It didn't really affect.
And I guess it's become transparent to all.
Well, after the floods, it's a great example where the citizen feels the direct effect of corruption, and that's a real game changer. As long as corruption is kind of considered to be something the politicians do, it's between them and themselves and big business, it doesn't really affect voters. But when something like the floods happen and voters understand the real consequences of corruption and how it touches their personal lives and how it endangers their personal lives,
it always feels all the more personal.
And then it turns into an election issue because most voters kind of accept the politicians are corrupt and they're willing to live with it until something like this happens. And then it becomes very personal and very real. And so the way that the current leadership will deal with this issue will determine whether or not it's an election issue in 2 years from now. If they take responsibility and they act, then it may not be an election issue in 2 years' time. If they don't, I think it will just grow and grow and grow, and it'll be a real issue in 2028.
So right now, the liberal opposition is small, but it's surviving. The Marcos administration is, as mentioned, facing eroding public trust. The Duterte base is very much, it's incredibly loyal despite everything. So what kind of candidate would you say would be a game changer? Looking at how Filipinos have been digesting everything that's been happening.
So I think what we're looking at today is a very polarized society. You have essentially two camps, and they're entrenched in this kind of war of political dynasties between them. And that situation can do one of two things. It can either greatly polarize society, and so we'll reach elections where it's 50-50 right down the line. Or, I think more likely, is that a third candidate will appear. So someone outside of these two political dynasties, someone who's campaigning on transparency, most likely to be someone quite young, someone from outside of the two big parties, someone who's not in national politics today, so maybe a mayor, for example. And he will greatly benefit from the fact that these two dynasties are so entrenched fighting each other that they lose track of what voters really want and what's really important to voters, because they're so engaged in their fight against each other. And so in that scenario, I think it begs for a young third-way candidate who's not entrenched in this warfare to...
He has to be of age, though.
So 35, right? So that's still young.
But we're not naming names here.
I'm not naming any names. Still quite young. And I think totally possible.
All right. So before I let you go, Aaron, we know you're holding a master class in campaigning here in Manila in February, right? What's the technique that you'll be teaching us that most Filipino campaigns underuse?
So yeah, so we're holding a conference called Campaign Playbook Live. It's going to be in February 10th and 11th here in Manila. We're not coming to teach. We're coming to share, and we're coming to also learn the most advanced techniques and the most advanced technology in election campaigns, whether it be use of AI technology, polling, creative, public opinion. So we know there's a big public opinion crisis in terms of how to measure public opinion and the accuracy of the polls in the Philippines. So we're going to definitely be addressing that. And it's for professionals only. So this is for campaign managers, it's for chiefs of staff, it's for candidates. So we're not coming to teach, we're coming to share a global experience. We also very much hope to learn from the Filipino experience. And we think it'll be a great conference for anyone in the business of politics.
All right. So maybe I'll just I'll just include this. Are you at liberty to share with us if you're in talks with someone right now as we speak? Perhaps you're just here to enjoy the scenery, the view, or you're in talks with someone.
Yeah. So as I said at the beginning of the show, a consultant has to be behind the scenes, right? The candidate has to be in the front. I know that we'll be working on these election campaigns with senior candidates on every level. So from representatives to senators, VP, and presidential candidates. For us, this is the first time in the Philippines. Yes, we're very excited about it. It's really a great opportunity, and I think a very, very crucial election for the country.
Politics here is very colorful.
Yes, that's what we love. That's what we love, and that's why we're coming in not to teach. We're coming to share
also to learn,
and also to learn. Absolutely.
All right. So, well, you've certainly given us a lot to think about, Aaron. We'll be very closely monitoring the 2028 elections. And who knows, maybe we'll see your fingerprints somewhere in there.
I hope so.
Right? Something tells me this isn't the last time that our paths will cross in Manila.
Appreciate
On that note, Aaron Shaviv, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for joining us on The Long Take.
Thank you so much.